producer, the composer, the musician, the arranger, the compassionate helper.
Honey, please. He is one of the greatest pioneers of our time.
The record of the year is...
The Grammy goes to...
Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson.
Yeah!
Quincy Jones!
For more than 50 years, Quincy Jones has made his mark on American culture.
You know, you name it, Quincy's done it.
Fly me to the moon.
Quincy wrote arrangements for Sinatra and has worked with everyone. Together with Michael Jackson, Quincy made music history.
His wisdom is timeless. He never gets old because he understands young.
The man writes good music.
In the heat of the night.
He scored 38 feature films.
He's a legend in his own time, is what he is.
Receiving 7 Oscar nominations. Sister. Quincy first worked as a film producer on The Color Purple, directed by Steven Spielberg.
I never thought I had to fight in my own house. Quincy Jones discovered me on a national level.
In producing The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Quincy made another major discovery.
It's the power of the cue.
He has written television themes, created shows, owned stations, record labels, Vibe magazine, multimedia ventures, and produced political events.
He's always trying to learn so that he could be a citizen with impact, not only in the United States, but around the world.
He is the one who is the international diplomat, the international star. We're not, any of us, above being a groupie when it comes to somebody like Quincy Jones.
Led by his heart and surrounded by his family, Quincy Jones never stops inspiring.
The greatest creativity, I think, is when you've got a collective creativity. Because you're letting it really be divine when you let all of that input and that love come together. And that's what it is love.
Yeah!
God bless you. Thank you. Do you mind if I take off my coat? It's a little hot in here. It's hard to follow my brother from Pisces, Fazl Hassan, a bed here. Congratulations again. Okay, everybody having a good time tonight? I can't hear you. Give it up, guys. You know you can party. Yes, no, it's really an honor to be here, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's great to be back in Geneva. I've been coming here since 1953. What's that, 55 years? With Lionel Hampton's band, and then I came back in 1960 with my own band with Nat King Cole. And then in 1961, where I was subpoenaed to come back to do a 17-city tour of Switzerland for the Migros Corporation with my big band. Wow, what a company. That name was a little strange at the time, but I took long to spell it right. I've also had a long time involvement with the Montreux Jazz Festival, which is by my family now, with Claude Knob over there. This is Claude Knob, the founder of the festival. There's a man that had a vision and made it all come true, and it's the Rolls Royce of festivals. But I was proud to be one of the festival's co-producers and with Claude and as a performing artist. But I'm especially pleased and honored to be here in the home of humanitarianism for the wonderful Conrad Hilton Foundation event. It's a beautiful foundation. Congratulations, Fred. Fantastic. Met some beautiful people here, gotten to know them and bonded, and some they're just very down-to-earth, regular people. A few of them a little ghetto. My friend little Tanya down here. But they're beautiful. I've always wanted to give something back since my days of traveling with the Lionel Hampton Band, when I took a towel from one of Conrad's hotels and never returned it. You don't understand how country we were back then. It was strange back then. I had never even seen a bidet. I didn't know what a bidet. I thought it was a foot wash, and I had no idea. And then I thought it was strange that somebody left on the bathroom door and left behind a terry cloth robe. I'd never seen that before. I know it was part of the hotel's hospitality. Before the technology even existed, Conrad saw that the world was interconnected. He had that vision, and that it was our responsibility to help alleviate suffering everywhere. Back when I was working with Frank Sinatra, I knew Conrad a little bit socially. I mean, everybody was social then. We lived on Bel Air, on Bellagio on Bel Air Road. At the time, he was married to Zsa Gabor, who, ironically enough, lives right next door to me now. I mean, right next door to me. God bless him. But back then, I didn't quite realize the extent of Conrad's humanitarian efforts and vision, which is embodied in this foundation. And it's a beacon in promoting a world of peace and stability governed by humane values. And that's what I love. I'd like to acknowledge the Swiss government officials in attendance this evening. You're often kidded for being neutral, but you're anything but neutral in your continuous support for this beautiful event. Not at all. And I'd like to give props to the outstanding men and women in the international humanitarian community who are here, because you've heard the music and you answered the call. My God, I cannot believe all of the precious people and dedicated people I've met and gotten to know in just 3 days. It's amazing, from the full range, you know. And taking a serious look on all this work can take its toll, so allow me to share a story that goes the other way for a minute. It was recently told at a memorial for the film producer, Charles Jaffe. I don't know why I thought about this. Charles was walking along Fifth Avenue in New York when a disheveled, raggedy dude walked up to him, staggered up to him and says, "I'll be up front with you. I'm a wino. Could you give me $1 so I could buy me some wine?" So Charlie gave the guy $1 and then said, "If I find out you use this money to buy a bowl of soup, I'm going to really be mad." That's ghetto. Oh, boy. Seriously, when you begin to think of vital organizations with well-known acronyms, BRAC belongs in the same breath as the acronym armies of Oxfam, UNICEF, and CARE. BRAC is more than a worthy recipient of this year's Hilton Humanitarian Prize. So is its founder and chairperson, the inspired and inspiring Dr. Fazla Hassan Abed, my brother from Pisces. Again, give him some. Give him some. Give it up. March 19th. In the midst of the crisis in Bangladesh, Fazla left his cushy job as a Shell oil executive to do something about it, as he just told you. He also understood that if you don't have an accurate diagnosis of the problem, you can never write a prescription. That's why his innovative ground-up approach has and built a sustaining foundation, bringing change to the quality of life for the poor people of Bangladesh and others all over the world. For 4 decades now, BRAC's multifaceted solution to attack all aspects of poverty has saved lives and empowered people, even as BRAC's volunteers have risked their own lives to improve the lives of others. In addition to bonding with him, and his being a Pisces brother with our birthdays just 5 days apart, Fazla's change of priorities in life strikes a very special chord with me. In a joint initiative between my foundation and Harvard University School of Public Health, we now present a Q Prize, I didn't make up that name, to the person who took the giant step on the path to peace. Last year's recipient was a man named Scott Neeson, who's from Scotland. He came to America, and he became one of the top executives and vice president at Fox Movies, making pictures like the Titanic, etc. But when he saw what was happening in Cambodia, like Fazla, he left his cushy job, the private planes and all those luxuries, gave it all up, and came over there to run one of the hospitals over there that my foundation has been involved in building in the poorest sections of Angkor Wat, where the average wage is 46 cents a day. I just adopted about 15 families over there. A little girl named JoJo that was HIV-born baby, was like a piece of protoplasm, and HIV antiviral medicine. They nurtured her up to 8 years old, the sweetest thing you ever saw in your life. And she lives in Angkor Wat. Her mother's in another city. The mother keeps 6 cents a day and sends JoJo at 8 years old 40 cents a day to send her 4 younger brothers and sisters, clothe them and feed them to go to school. It's not acceptable. Fazla and Scott proved that you make a living with what you get, and you make a life with what you give. As a side note, this year's recipients of our Q Prize are 27-year-old Gustavo Dudamel and his mentor, Dr. Jose Antonio Abreu. They're from Venezuela, where they trained and mentored and saved 250,000 young people from impoverished backgrounds, in many cases away from gangs and lives of crime, by giving them music education and teaching them how to play musical instruments. And you see them playing clarinets and violins with scars and cuts all over their face, but they're okay now. And by the way, Gustavo, I'm happy to say, will be the new permanent conductor of the Los Angeles Philharmonic around the first of the year. He's 27 years old, and he is a monster. He's amazing. Again, there's the power of music, you know. I love that. I've learned from so many people this weekend, so much from you. And your unique experiences have really turned me on, sparked me, and hopefully I can maybe incorporate some of them in my own efforts. Perhaps over the next few minutes I can return the favor. So in the words of Tanya Rushev, Dr. Abed's niece, Leo, please let's all communicate. I beg you for that. I think that we decided it last night after a very heated, passionate discussion there about communicating. I really mean that. I beg you, email, text, whatever. My email. It's important. Let's share the ideas and connect the dots. I started my journey in life in the same situation as the people you're trying to help, so I know how it feels, and I understand what poverty is all about. I grew up on the very affluent side of Chicago, the biggest black ghetto in America during the Great Depression in the 1930s with 5 million black people. Unfortunately, BRAC wasn't around to change our lives. Here's my mansion.
Have mercy, that's Elvira's house.
You're living in America. Just make it what you want it to be.
Anyway, my neighborhood was about as bad as anything in South Africa. In fact, we had a Soweto almost in every city in America then, and still do today, trust me. Most people, including Americans, don't even realize it. And during our summer vacations, my daddy used to drive me and my brother down to visit my grandmother to her summer villa in Louisville, Kentucky. My grandmother was an incredible woman, was a strong, coal-black ex-slave born in Cameroon who lived in the shotgun shack with kerosene lamps and a coal stove, ice on the floor. The high-tech system, the security system, was a bent rusty nail to lock the back door. And dinner would be whatever she could find to put in the frying pan. even rats, which my brother and I used to go down. She'd send us down to the Mississippi River, and she said, that's the ones with the tail still moving, and she'd put it and cook it up in onions and greens. It's not exactly the cordon bleu cuisine, and I couldn't handle it today, but what the hell, I was 7 years old, it was dark, and we were hungry. We were also as broke as the Ten Commandments in those days. Chicago was also the #1 spawning ground for the most notorious white and black gangsters in the country. My friend out there is aware of that. I met him last night, including Al Capone, John Dillinger, or the roughest guys you've ever seen. The South Side had different and lethal gangs on every block, junior and senior, dukes and duchess, equal opportunity thugs. Until the age of 10, all my brother and I ever saw were Tommy guns, stogies, and piles of money on lamp-lit tables. We also saw dead bodies everywhere. And it's amazing how quickly you can get used to it as long as it's not you. You see men hanging on telephone poles with ice picks in their neck. And my biggest role models then were the Jones boys. No relation, though. Although my father, who was a master carpenter, worked for them, the most notorious black gangsters in the history of America. They originated the numbers racket in the hood, and they owned a chain of 5 and dime stores. The first and biggest black businesses in America and in the hood, until Capone and the legendary mobster like Sam Giacomo, who originated their own personal version of the hostile takeover, not so gently persuaded him to get out of town and move to Mexico quick. So my father got the message and decided it was time for us to take a little trip too. This was during the middle of World War II, 1943, when I was 10 years old. He took my brother Lloyd, younger brother Lloyd, and I from the barber shop with no stopping at home to pick up our toys to get us on the first trailway bus to the Pacific Northwest. Then we took an hour ferry ride to Bremerton, Washington, an exclusive community that was located on the extreme outskirts of Seattle, the Bremerton Shipyard. The bus stop in Bremerton ended at the bottom of a 3-mile hill. From there, we transferred to the soles of our shoes to that extra 3 miles up the hill where they put all the black people. My father worked as a master carpenter in the Bremerton Navy shipyard, but I was still convinced that being a thug was the way to go. Those were my heroes. And you're always going to copy the most successful person in the neighborhood. That's the way we started. We were the first black kids in town, and Chicago had provided us with all the training we needed to test our baby gangster skills and take over the turf. We couldn't wait. So one night, we break into an army, which was our recreation center, and we heard there was some great ice cream there, lemon meringue pie. So we wore that out, ate all of that up, and had a pie fight afterwards, and afterwards we split up individually and went around breaking into individual rooms. I broke into an administration room, and in the dark, I spotted a little spinet piano over there in the dark, and I was almost ready to close the door, but for some reason, thank God, some of God's whispers talked to me and said, "Idiot, go back in that room," and I slowly walked over, stared at the piano, and I let my fingers go down and touch the keys. And at that moment, it was the moment of truth for me. Every bone in my body, every cell in my body knew in a heartbeat that music would be my life forever, and it saved my life. Food and water would feed my soul, body, but music would nourish my mind and my soul. And music has afforded me the opportunity to travel extensively and see this entire planet and observe for myself, because for years my favorite motto has been, you've got to go to know. And I know everybody in this audience will agree with that. You can't listen to, in America, CNN or Fox and third-grade newspapers. They don't tell you what's really going on. I've seen how indigenous music allows societies and cultures to maintain their own identities, which helps them survive in the direst of circumstances. You know, I've seen people in my neighborhood that bought music before they bought clothes and food. Music is the only thing on the planet that affects the left and right brain simultaneously. The emotion, intellect, soul, and science. It has healing and bonding powers, and in a universal language that can build bridges behind us. A caring person and a minute from back in the day, great jazz saxophone player named Ben Webster gave me the best advice I ever had in my life when I began traveling about 50 years ago. He said, young blood, wherever you go when you travel, you'll find that the soul of a country is in their food, their music, and the food that they eat. So you listen to the music they listen to, eat the food they eat, and learn 30 or 40 words in every language. And I took his advice to heart, and it's been my credo ever since. And now, until this day, I'm still practicing my Serbo-Croatian, Farsi, Turkish, Greek, Swedish, Russian, Japanese, a few words of Yiddish, and I'm also learning to speak and write Mandarin and Arabic at this moment. But don't worry, I'll continue to speak in English. I promise you. I barely can do that. When I was a musical director for Dizzy Gillespie's band in the mid-1950s, during a State Department tour, we performed all over the Middle East, Iran, everywhere. Karachi, Dhaka, his hometown. I didn't know Karachi was so far away from the eastern Pakistan. It was 3,000 miles away. We looked at the conditions there and could see the seeds of change that were already starting to change and evolve and grow. And I took a 50-year Polaroid of it, and I remember back in 1953, a little girl of 5 or 6 standing in the summer rain at 1:30 in the morning after we finished one of our concerts in Tunisia, with no shoes on and one hand behind her back and the other hand out front saying, Mister, Mister. That's the first time I'd ever seen it that strong. So 3 of us gave us all the money we had, which was no big deal because we're making $17 a night. She went into an alley. She gave it to 2 men who were her uncle and her father. The next day, we learned from our guide that they chopped off her other little hand so she could beg more efficiently. I was 19 years old, and that was the night that I became totally addicted and committed. I saw poverty everywhere I traveled, and it committed me back to my roots in Chicago in the day-to-day struggle to get by. I began imagining ways to improve the lives of poor people forever, especially the children. Identifying with it and having children of my own. Extra incentive. They gave me extra incentive and sent me on the path of giving back. I now have 7 kids, ages 15 to 55, 6 beautiful girls, and 1 boy. And the girls are what happened to my hair, my afro. Girls can do that. They know how to get anything they want from their daddy. And I learned a long time ago, women are 13 years superior than men. Don't you ever forget it, man. They're so smart, they make you all think you're in charge, don't they? You run the house, I'm the man in my house. Right. When entire economies and corporations go into crises, wealthy governments find the money needed for a bailout. But when we see crises of poverty, hunger, and disease, where's this rapid response? That came through loud and clear in 1985 when I got an unexpected call from Lionel Richie and his manager, Ken Cragen. They told me, Harry Belafonte felt we should do something about hundreds of thousands of people in Ethiopia who were starving to death as a result of famine and civil war. Band-Aid in Europe had been a success in Europe. They're doing something about it over there, and we are not, which was true. So he suggested we organize a tour. No way. Too complicated. 46 major stars? I don't think so. So we decided to do an all-star record event in 12 hours instead, and I suggested that Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie co-write the song, and they came up with the We Are the World. It wasn't so obvious this is going to be a success. You never know what's going to happen with these things. Everybody has that idea. We started out with Lionel Richie, Kenny Rogers, LaToya, and Van Aykroyd. That's what we started. We didn't know we were going to go where we went, and we kept moving. I've heard all the snide little cracks about people have made about the song. There was a bunch of rich elitists getting together for self-aggrandizement. But none of us had a clue that the USA for Africa would raise $63 million to feed the hungry. And then we would guilt our government into spending $800 million more. You do the math. It's fashionable to put down celebrities for getting involved with politics, right? You know, if they get involved in politics, they have no right for a political idea or charities until they needed to raise money, then everybody's a believer. Some politicians, especially the ones in Washington I've encountered, like to say, what do celebrities know about issues? You want to try Bono, George Clooney, Sidney Poitier, Rob Redford, Bob Geldof, Oprah Winfrey, Alicia Keys, or Paul Newman, God rest his soul, and the dozens and dozens of others who have been totally committed, give everything they can, anytime they're called. However, what we didn't, from the USA for Africa, didn't focus on then as celebrities was doing our homework. We impulsively sent over $1 million worth of food in a plane we chartered, but because when we turned it over to the Ethiopian government, we didn't understand the ground and the NGOs at all. But because they were in conflict with Eritrea, and not knowing the bureaucracy that was present, they dumped it on the desert, said if they want it, let them come and get it. And in 4 days, all the food spoiled. So Bono and I met later that year when we were doing a Live Aid concert, and we both realized that all major world issues are extremely complex and multifaceted, as my brother said before, and that we agreed it was time we had to go to school and understand the realities, like the NGOs, the heads of states, and many other complex mechanics of helping people internationally. It's no joke. As you know, the bottom line is if you don't know what's happening on the ground, all the charity in the world has no impact. Money and passion are definitely not enough. You have to know ways to generate the money, how to distribute it. If you don't strategically operate like a serious business or corporation, the first thing you learn is that a pauper is a pitiful philanthropist. So I started to apply my core skills in music orchestration, writing for and producing movies and television and business to my humanitarian work. Being a musician, I still look at everything I deal with, including helping people as an orchestra, understanding the principles of how things fit together. To me, an orchestra is the greatest example of world peace because it's 120 people thinking about exactly the same thing with a conductor. They're not thinking about the stock market, or taxes, or Wall Street, or armed build-ups, or any other problems. Everybody there is focused on either 16th and or 8th notes or quarter notes simultaneously. A conductor, a composer, and all those minds are thinking about one thing, like the people in this room tonight. Being on the same page and going in the same direction, each bringing their individual talents and skills to reach that goal. Doing it together for the greater good. The collective creativity is the most powerful creativity on this earth. Fame, celebrity, pygmy stretching is like currency. The best thing you can do is learn how to spend it to help somebody else and shine a light on a problem. Do you know that the money French teenagers spend on ice cream in 4 months could educate every child in the world? Or what American girls between the age of 14 and 20 and to 18 years old spend on cosmetics in 4 months could achieve the same results. Imagine what the world would be if the school books were published by Haagen-Dazs and Revlon. Just we'd be in great shape. Or did you know, any of you in this room know that there's a new weapon now called the Archangel that's being manufactured under the radar in Kansas? In Arkansas, I'm sorry. It's a plastic rocket-propelled grenade weapon that is made with plastic bullets. Just what we need. With all the insanity going on in the world today, you have to do whatever you can do to fight against it for our own sanity. Again, you have to go to know. In 1999, I was fortunate enough to be called to join Bono and Bob Geldof to join the Jubilee 2000 group to take a shot at maybe reducing a little bit the HIPC third world debt relief. So here we are, begging for some at the Summer Vatican at the Costa Gondola for about a 25-minute audience with Pope Paul John. He responded to our mission statement by reading a 4-page affirmation back to us. That was on a Thursday. Bono and I then left at the summer home, for his summer home down in Aix in the south of France. Saturday afternoon, we couldn't believe our eyes. We read in the Herald Tribune that as a result of this visit to the Vatican, Bolivia, Mozambique, and the Ivory Coast were to receive HIPC third world debt relief to the tune of $27.5 billion. I don't know how much of that finally got there, but you can imagine how much we freaked out. Here's two raggedy Irish rock and rollers and a South Side Chicago bebop brother with no political agenda. Grinning like three foxes eating sauerkraut. We were happy though. And the lesson is, even if it is a long shot, it's better to say, I'm sorry I did, than I wish I had. Or you can never get an A if you're afraid to get an F. I turned 75 years old a few months ago, and I'm not even close to thinking about slowing down. Not even close. I've heard my friend Brother Galbraith said that line the other night. Contrary to popular opinion, the good news is once you get over the hill, you do pick up speed. The bad news is what the beloved comedian George Burns, we used to hang out when he was the age of 100, once told me, that sex after 90 is like shooting pool with a rope. My lifelong commitment to helping my brothers and sisters in Africa began in 1970, working with Nelson Mandela. Visiting the Northwest Provence was the genesis of a trip in 1999, which I co-hosted at Mandela's request. We combined that with my concern about the rising epidemic and corrosive effect of gangs. So through my Listen Up Foundation, we had a great opportunity to take 5 male and female at-risk gangbangers from South Central Los Angeles to visit South Africa. South Central to South Africa. Now, movies tend to romanticize gangsters, but the effect they have on people's lives is anything but glamorous. I've got my medals at the age of 7 in Chicago to prove it. This hand, when I was 7 years old, the gang caught me on the wrong street, and they impaled my hand on a fence with a switchblade knife and an ice pick jammed in my temple. And I ain't talking about a Jewish synagogue now. It was terrifying living in Chicago back then. And from the streets of L.A. to Chicago to Soweto, gangsters flourish in the poorest neighborhoods and make our efforts to lift people out of the vicious cycle of poverty more difficult, but not impossible. The gangbangers from L.A. got to see firsthand how the people in South Africa lived. And after just 10 days there, our tough, seen-it-all kids from South Central got down on their knees and cried like babies when they met Nelson Mandela and kissed his hand. We watched the spirit of African Ubuntu take over their souls. Ubuntu, that's the African collective spirit that is bigger than any one individual. We saw it, we witnessed it transforming their lives. Here they are.
On Nelson Mandela's 80th birthday, Quincy Jones made a pledge to build 100 homes in the poorest areas of South Africa.
Searching for a way to help, maybe a good start would be their basic living conditions. But we couldn't do it alone. We needed the right partners. So I asked my dear friend Richard Lovett from CAA. He immediately said yes. Then he told me about Michelle Kidd and Habitat for Humanity. And I realized these were my people. My brothers, my sisters. I had to do something. I could not just stand by and watch.
5 youths from South Central Los Angeles were selected to take part in this cross-cultural house-building experience.
My name is Joanna Johnson.
My name is Hector Sanchez.
My name is Yayla Mee White. I grew up in the areas of both South Central and Watts. My family actually moved to South Central, where I grew up with a stepfather that was an alcoholic and also a drug addict, which led me to start affiliating with the local gangs in my area. And I decided that at around the age of 17, I would stop affiliating so much with the gangs in my area, because I went to school one day to pick up my younger brother, and in an all-Crip school, he was wearing a red rag trying to mimic me. So that's what made me really decide that I need to change my life. So I started working with a nonprofit organization that deals directly with gang members.
I grew up in South Central LA in a neighborhood that was infested with crime and violence and drugs. Growing up was very difficult, trying to keep my life straight, trying to make my parents proud, because they were always working hard trying to provide food for us. Right now, I'm helping the gang members and everybody in the community just to get more involved and to make change in the community.
I'm a survivor of incest, rape, alcohol and drug abuse. I've been associated with gangs. Because of that now, because of I've had the past of selling myself
and assimilating myself into the dominant culture. I tried to prevent others from doing it. So I work in the community. I try to fight for people's freedom and for their self-identity, or to help guide them into their self-identity.
The delegation members were invited guests to the Nelson Mandela Children's Foundation AIDS Orphan Appeal.
As you can see, we were all so deeply moved by this amazing event, and this is where we were totally blown away.
Let's stand as one in unity and take action against HIV.
We came as strangers, hoping to make friends, and by the time we left, we were family. Moto, Kimoto, Kabato. We're all in this together. I've never seen such a turnaround in my life. They don't let these faces fool you. These are some tough kids, you know, incest, rape, everything, dope, little girls too. And for this trip, they saw everything with the churches and Robbins Island, everything. They went to all of it. And we built 100 homes at Orange Farm. It was a birthday present we gave to Nelson Mandela with the Habitat of Humanity. And they turned their lives around. Now, you won't believe these kids. They're productive citizens in Los Angeles and role models, showing other kids that it is possible to live to be my age. Well, maybe halfway, you know. Here's a couple of them today, the transformation.
Omari Trice is now a program director at a charter school.
As a person of color from South Central, it makes you think that you can do it. It can be done, you know. He did it as a living example.
Hector Sanchez is director of a community center.
I have a lot of friends that are incarcerated right now. This opportunity gave me the chance to realize that there's other ways.
So, you know, it's all possible, you know, if you just take a shot. We saw immense poverty and homeless people in Rio when I first went there in 1956 on the State Department tour with the Dizzy Gillespie Band. The great Brazilian lyricist and poet laureate Vinicius de Moraes told me that one day this would be the biggest scourge of Brazil. 3,000 homeless children with no parents. He was prophetic. Today, I was there last year, early this year, the number is 600,000 strong. That's why I'm committed to reversing the cycles of drug and violence that permeate Rio and Sao Paulo and define its slums, which are called favelas. The good news down there is, thanks to the great musician Carlinhos Brown, and he changed the favelas in El Salvador, Bahia, by convincing them to switch from guns to drums. And it worked. They have no violence or dope problems. I go back to Brazil every year to 52 years, and they're still like family, the favela people. So you'll see the girls come and entertain us, and the Afro reggae guys come and entertain us. We hug each other on the way out. They're all cleaning their AK-47s, and it's a nightmare. We got to really work with that. But this 25th of February, we're going to produce a high-definition 3D movie on the Carnival. I've got Barry Sonnenfeld directing, one of the best directors in our business. And the profits from this movie will benefit the favelas and the Hurricane Katrina victims in New Orleans and Mississippi, which is a sister city. We'll have all the musicians on a special float from the musicians of Katrina on the parade. Wynton Marsalis will be doing the second line, and all those great musicians, Neville Brothers. And since I believe in the power of the film to illuminate, my company is also producing a film in association with Will Smith's company and Robert De Niro's company about the life of Rwanda's president, Paul Kagame. He'll be portrayed by Will Smith. There are those who would prefer to see the bottom billion drop off the face of the earth, but fortunately, like everybody in this room, and fortunately people like Fazl Abed and Paul Collier leading the way with the bottom billion, probably, as he said the other night, it's probably 2 billion now, are leading the way against that. And the forces, hopefully the forces of technology and science may be a little stronger than we think it is, providing children and families with tools to survive and succeed in the future, such as the $100 computer Alan Kay, and a distinguished computer scientist and also a very dear friend and jazz musician, along with Nicholas Negroponte, the founder and director of MIT's Media Laboratory, are attempting to develop 200 million wireless laptops for students around the world that will hopefully cost around $100 each. It's problematic. Of course, everything good is, you know. And we're fighting that fight every day. I hear from Negroponte around the world. The other computer companies want to charge more. Marvin Minsky, the co-founder of artificial intelligence at MIT, keeps me informed on all the progress of something else exciting as we're going from silicone and microchips and moving into nanotechnology, which is carbon and hydrogen atoms. It's nuclear technology. Nanotechnology, as you all know, will be capable of 1 trillion transactions a second. I asked Marvin one night, how much will it be, how faster will it be than this dinosaur stuff we got now? And he said 1 billion times faster than it is today. Nanotechnology combined with the color-coded genome breakthrough from Caltech, which is now waiting for results of proteins and genes, means we can look forward to having the biggest medical renaissance in the history of medicine. And it will allow for greater health prevention and care in even the poorest countries. They even promised to take me to 110. I'm going to believe them for the moment. As a member of the Millennium Promise, I had a heartening 4-hour conversation with a Nobel doctor named Anders Björklund about the possibility of malaria no more. He relayed his excitement about a drug called ACT from a miracle plant he came across in China. He said ATC combined with the present insecticide on bed nets can potentially eradicate malaria in 5 years, and that's the motto that we're using, malaria no more. Scientists are reminding us that we need to get back to the common values and basic values of integrity, spirituality, and morality to promote harmony and understanding. As technology continues... Thank you. That's going to be our salvation as the technology continues to determine the shape of our future. We can find that pathway back by teaching the Chinese proverb about the essence of destiny. Watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Choose your words, for they become your actions. Understand your actions, so they become your habits. Understand your habits, for they will become your character. And develop your character, because it becomes your destiny. Or how about the concept of maybe, what would happen if we tried it backwards? You know, musicians think all this kind of crazy stuff. Maybe we ought to try living the life cycle backwards. How about, what would happen if we just died first, got it out the way, okay? Everybody's worried about it. Get it out the way first. Then you get kicked out. You live in an old age home. You get kicked out when you're too young. You get a gold watch and you go back to work, okay? You work 40 years until you're young enough to enjoy your retirement. Whether you do college or not is up to you. Either way, you do drugs, alcohol, you party, you get ready for high school. You go to grade school, you become a little kid, you play, you have no responsibilities, you become a little baby, you go back into the womb, you spend your last 9 months floating, and then you finish it all off as an orgasm. Hey, it's just like worth trying. Who knows? On a more serious note, I'd like to... I was introduced to Hani Masri and Yuri Severe, a Palestinian and Israeli friend who were best friends, and they asked me to be their third partner in a project called We Are the Future. And it was dedicated to helping kids from 5 of the most conflict countries in the world, and cities, who are being deprived of their God-given right to a family, to good health, and to an education, and to hope. When Al-Qaeda, RPGs, and a 12-year-old drifts into despair and becomes a suicide bomber, we must counter it in a very non-destructive way. We owe it to every child on this planet. I'm not telling anybody in this room anything. We owe every child on this planet to creatively give them a positive and common destiny. We Are the Future was built and is still building child centers in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Asmara, Eritrea, Freetown, Sierra Leone, Kigali, Rwanda, Nablus, Palestine, and Kabul, Afghanistan. I saw the one in Kigali, and it made my heart smile, soul smile, to see these 500 kids with the technology and feeling alive and hopeful. Providing services in education, health, water, purification, telemedicine, nutrition, agriculture, business, everything, sports, the arts, and technology. We had technology donated by Microsoft, Oracle, and Cisco, and it was an attempt to give the kids the tools that they desperately need to change their lives and future. We're also tied in with Jennifer McCrae of my foundation, Jay Winston, Director of Harvard School of Public Health, the Inner City Development Fund Bank, headed by ex-Colombian Ambassador Luis Moreno, Jeffrey Walker, Jeffrey Sachs of Millennium Promise, and Chip Lyons, who's now an executive at Bill Gates and Warren Buffett's foundation in Seattle. Saw him 2 weeks ago. 4 years ago, we raised awareness for Rio the Future. To raise the awareness for it, we held a concert in Rome after going to Jordan, thinking about the Red Sea, too dangerous, with Queen Rania and Abdullah. And we went to Jerusalem, too dangerous. And we said that Rome has as much bloodshed as any place in the world. The show, which you'll see in a moment, was the most beautiful gumbo of diversity and unity, featuring some of the greatest musical artists from all over the world, and some of the world's greatest actors, athletes, and comedians from everywhere, entertaining and enlightening the 750,000 people at Circus Maximus, and providing again that love always sings louder than hate. I know everybody's tired. Maybe speak just all night, but it has been really beautiful seeing you all here this evening, and I'm grateful for giving me the chance to speak to you and the patient that sit here. I'll never forget it. It's really much more than I gave you. Because you represented myself, and I'm grateful for it. My wish is that we walk out of here and smell a brand new flavor of air. Let our minds open up. It's a brand new day. There's a beautiful ancient expression in Egypt that I heard about 50 years ago. I don't pronounce it right all the time. People say, what? Birjudak, or the plural, Birjudakam. I heard it 50 years ago. It's an ancient expression of respect. Birjudakam, which means in your presence, the reflection of you on me makes me feel like a better person. Your light gives me light. So I say to you all, Birjudakam. You've already blessed me many times. May God bless you even more. I do love you. Never stop what you're doing, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Love you. Let's party. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Merci mille fois. Les enfants, je t'aime.